Welcome back. So, today we are going to be looking at the preliminary patch notes that came out yesterday. They're not too long, but this is our first taste of what's going to be coming in the next update, so let's get to it. So, starting in weapons and soldiers, there's going to be increased aiming stability for the following weapons: the Owen Mark 1, the 1918 A2, the Bren 1, Bren 2, Vickers Berthier, the BSA Model 1929 Thompson, and the Gewehr 41M. So across the board, this is looking pretty nice. The 1918 A2 should start to set it apart from some of the other bars. Sometimes I feel like a lot of the bars can feel kind of samey. I know that their stats are different, but to be entirely honest, if I pick up one bar versus another, most of the time I don't really feel a great difference. The Bren 1 and Bren 2 and the Vickers, they're all effectively the same gun, so it makes sense that they're going to change them all. I kind of appreciate that. They might actually see more use in my lineup this way. It's just, I don't know. Back when BR2 was the cap, like back when we had 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5 matchmaking, playing BR2 was, the cap for like protected matchmaking. I kind of avoided bringing low BR American light machine guns just because I don't really care for the Bren or the Vickers. They're not bad. Like I did bring them from time to time. It's just I'd rather have an SMG at that point at that BR. They're just big and cumbersome and I don't know. Like they're not the worst thing in the world. Don't get me wrong. They do have 30 round magazines. They're relatively mobile. They just don't do it for me. They're not. I think in the past, the way I described it is they're not like iconic Allied fantasy to me. Like I know that they were a huge part of the British Army, but I'm American and I like playing my American boys in the war. I like having some Allied forces that I can play as, but like their rifles do more for me or their planes do more for me. Their machine guns and their SMGs don't. But maybe that's just me. That being said, seeing the BSA 1929 Thompson get a stability buff, I love it. That's one of my favorite low BR guns in the game. For a long time there were only two ways to get Thompsons at BR2, and since BR2 was what I played at low BR, it locked me into these two options. So I have an assault squad that's fully kitted out with 4 BSA Thompsons because that's one option to get a Thompson, and the other option were the Marine Raiders, which I also ran, and they're both awesome. Now, the downside is that they run smaller magazines, like the Raiders, for example, run 20 round magazines, which is real life accurate. It was a popular loadout in the Pacific in World War II to run 20 round magazines on Thompsons. Don't get me wrong, personally, I would rather have a bigger magazine, but it is accurate. The BSA, on the other hand, I don't think it was ever officially adopted, but I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it was something that they tested. Um, but like I said, I could be wrong. But I like them in game. I'm not sure if you can still get them. Like I've spent enough gold orders on them that I can't get anymore, so they may have rotated out of the shop at this point. But if they're still in the shop and you do play BR2 and you like Thompson specifically, I don't think that you can go wrong with them, especially if they're going to get a stability buff. That being said, there are things in the tech tree that perform just fine, like the Lanchester does just fine. So it's not something that you need. I just think that they're more fun to use. But I think that's mostly a personal preference thing. They implemented a 20% squad XP bonus for unique soldiers, so there's finally more of a point to getting the gold order soldiers. I still wish that they would do something more exciting with them. Um, Gold order soldiers just ain't it, Chief. Not for me. I wish that either they would make them like one-to-one copies of their real life counterparts and make them genuinely look like the people they're supposed to be. Um, which still wouldn't really like incentivize me to get them and use them, but it would at least be cool. Or if I had it my way, they would take out the premium vehicles, or not the premium, the gold order vehicles and the gold order soldiers, and replace them with gold order like premium squads or gold order event squad kind of things. I don't care if they've got the XP bonus or not. Like they can either treat them like premium squads and have premium bonuses, or they can treat them like event squads and not have premium bonuses. I don't care which one they do, but they should have a shop similar to what they have now for vehicles and for soldiers, except it's squads. So you'd have like one squad for each nation come out each battle pass and go into the shop. It would fill up just like the vehicles do now or the weapons do now or whatever, right? And you'd get one of these tokens each battle pass and you could spend it on one of these squads. I would so much rather have that because with the vehicles already were kind of iffy value to me before, because effectively what you're getting is a camouflage and a fully upgraded vehicle. With a high BR vehicle, it has value because you don't have to pay the silver to upgrade it. I feel like some of that value is being eroded now because the silver value or the silver amounts to upgrade things are going down, which is a good thing, by the way. But even before they did that, I still was kind of iffy on the value of gold order vehicles. Like really what I care about are gold order guns. If I could only get gold order guns and nothing but gold order guns in my battle pass, I would do that. Because like I get these vehicle tokens all the time and I just sit on them for weeks or for months. The same thing with soldiers. Every once in a while I'll sit down and I'll just throw a bunch of them at like gold order soldiers and I'll try to like make a squad out of them or just use it to get rid of them. But to be honest, I pile up gold order soldiers or gold soldier orders all the time and just sit on them and don't use them. And maybe this is just a me thing. Maybe I'm out of touch, but I just don't care for either the soldiers or the vehicles. I would so much rather have a gold squad system where I could go in and there'd be a squad of dudes. They all have, I don't know, some other weapon. Like maybe they all have Mosin Nagants, and those Mosin Nagants all have like battlefield carvings into the stocks. Yeah, they're not really special, but they're a little bit different. I might go and pick that squad up just because it's cool and it's actually a whole squad that I can use. I don't know. I realize I'm probably never going to get what I want, but I just don't really care for the current system. But it's great that at least there's going to be a 20% squad XP bonus for having unique soldiers. And I'm pretty sure my understanding for this is it's whether or not you have unique soldiers in your squad, it doesn't stack with having multiples in there, which is fine. It's fine the way it is. But it's nice that you're getting a bonus at all. Anyway, they fixed an issue with AI soldiers prioritize using their 1911 shorts over their primary weapons. I think this depends on the squad that you put it on, right? Because, for example, I mentioned the other day, I have those 1911s on, like, sniper squads. Or I've got the Luger and the 1911 on sniper squads, and to be honest, the AI pulling them out and using them is probably to their advantage. That being said, if you put it on, like, a machine gun team or an assault team, I could see how that would be problematic. Moving on, they adjusted the AI reactions in close combat situations. I'm curious what this actually means. Traditionally, if you got within arm's reach of an AI, they just bayoneted you. I'm curious if this means they're going to do it less, or if this means that when you're in close combat but not bayonet range, that they're going to react and shoot you faster. Like, I would like some clarification, whether it's speeding them up or slowing them down. So moving on, they changed the icon and the name of the function to call an artillery or supply crate drop with the radio operator. It's nice that they're changing that, but I think what we need are separate cooldowns on the radio operator dependent on what you're calling in. Like, for example, artillery should have its own cooldown that's separate from calling in airstrikes. Like, you should be able, basically, what I'm saying is, if I call in an airstrike, it should not lock out the team from calling in artillery during that time. They should be separate. You should be able to do both. Likewise, calling in artillery or an airstrike should not preclude you from calling in a supply crate. Same with smoke, for that matter. You could tie the bombers and the supply crates together, so if one's coming in, the other one's locked out. And you could do the same thing with artillery, where if artillery is coming in, smoke is locked out. But I would like them to make it so you can use multiple call-ins from different categories without stepping on each other's toes. So they changed the default firing mode for the automatic to automatic for the FG German weapon family, so the FG-42 and its various variants. It's probably a good thing. Um, I understand why in the past they didn't, because at the time when it was introduced, this was mostly a semi-auto game at high BR. This is going to be much more convenient, though, for your AI, because your AI are potentially going to be more useful now. As far as, like, the player itself, I'm sure most of you know this, but in order to make a lot of the older automatic rifles work, like the FG-42 or the AVS-36 or the AVT, I feel like they're kind of perk dependent. Like, you can manually control them, but it's much, much more comfortable with vertical recoil reduction. So, if you've got the perks, it's not going to cause you any issues. It's just going to be quality of life and be more convenient. If you don't, it's going to probably be a little bit annoying, but you're pretty much in the same boat that the rest of us were in before. The only thing I'll say is that this really does compound the need for large ammo bags on all of the squads that are running these weapons, because you're going to blow through your ammo. I think you get like 3 magazines on an FG-42, something like that, because they're still more or less treated like a semi-auto rifle. Realistically, 6 magazines feels light when you can shoot through them as fast as you do with those weapons, so you kind of need the large ammo bags. I kind of wish they would just buff the ammo amount that you carry, but, it is what it is. Moving on from there, the MP41's damage was moved to 7.0 to match the MP40. They adjusted the appearance of Italian paratroopers in Battle of Tunisia maps. They refined the collision of AT guns, making it easier to neutralize soldiers operating them with melee weapons. They added an automatic firing mode for the Gewehr 43 Kurz. Now this is interesting. I have one of these. I really wish that I had gotten more of them back in the day, and I kind of hope that since it's getting changes, it'll rotate back through the shop soon. I don't know if we've ever seen anything rotate back in, but I would like to see the Kurzgewehr come back. To be honest, going from burst to full auto is not actually a significant change. If you've used it, but basically the burst fire mode on it was such that you could sit there and you could keep clicking and it would keep firing and it felt like it was automatic. So this is really just taking out the middleman, and now your finger is your burst selector, which is fine. I prefer it this way. 550 isn't super fast, but with a platform as stable as the Kurzgewehr, like, it's a tack driver. It's amazing. I would like to see it come back. The Beretta PGCR is a fantastic alternative in the time being. It effectively does the same thing. I would just like to see the Kurzgewehr come back. I just think it's a cool gun. Moving on from there, the Garrote 03's magazine capacity has gone from 15 to 20. So the Garrote squad, even though the people who have watched my reviews before, I'm not a fan of premium rifle squads. The Garrote squad is a squad that every time that there's a sale, I always look at it and I'm like, man, those guys seem so cool. And then I don't get them because I'm like, well, I've got like Gewehr 43s and they basically do the same thing. And I've got the ZHs and they basically do the same thing. And I've got the FG 42s and they're literally better. But every time I look at them, I think they look really cool. And them going from a 15 to a 20 round magazine on their semi-auto rifles, it seems pretty cool. Now, of course, they're going to be at a disadvantage because they don't have any specialists. If we ever get that universal specialist slot that, some of us have been asking for, maybe. Like, just having an engineer in there would be nice, but, you know, there probably isn't enough value in them to take them over a tech tree rifle squad, unfortunately, because I think their gun is cool. But it's like you could bring a squad with the ZHs, and you could attach like an engineer and I don't know, like a machine gunner, and I think it would feel better. But I don't know. They changed the classification of the RMN 50 to hand mortar. Its kills now count as mortar kills instead of grenade kills. That's cool. That one's not available anymore, but it's a cool weapon. Changed the display range of radio operator supply crate. Changed the supply crate drop icon from artillery to an ammo box. Fixed the conflict between the FG42 variants. Improved the accuracy of the FG42 too. So that's nice. Improved the accuracy of the SKT-40. Also kind of nice. Added partial reload to the following weapons. Here we go. The Beretta 1934, the STG-44, the Sniper STG-44, the STG-45. So there's still some weapons left in the game that, besides these, that need to get it added to them. I appreciate that they're actually going back and actively updating these weapons. In 2024, at least to me, I kind of expect FPS games to have variable reloads where, they can tell whether or not you have a round in the chamber or not, so you don't rack the bolt every time you reload it. I feel like that should just be a standard thing at this point because there are games that had it like a decade ago. I appreciate that they're adding it to weapons that don't have it. They've made pretty good leaps and bounds in this. A lot of the rifles used to have issues where your soldier would always just stuff stripper clips into them, even when they only needed a few rounds, and they've gotten way better with that. So I appreciate that they're continuing to add to this. I think there's still a few weapons that need it, though. But I appreciate it. This is good. So they've added sprint penalties for the Type PA LMG. They've rebalanced the FG German family. That's interesting. So the FG-42, 42-2, Sniper, the grenade launcher, the Krieghoff. So increased recoil compensation and recoil impulse. These changes will put this family on par with the Type PA automatic rifle and the T20. So everything that I said earlier about needing vertical recoil reduction perks that just went out the window. Apparently you don't. But in the past, it was kind of useful. Increased the recoil compensation of the ABS-36 from 60% to 75%. So they're adding it to some extent to the ABS as well. Although I feel like the ABS in-game right now still has a lot of muzzle flip. Which is fair. It is a big rifle. I don't know, like, if the FGs are going to be on par with the Type PA and the T20, like, their recoil stat on their stat sheet says that they have a lot of recoil, but in game, they feel like they just don't. So, when this goes live, maybe the FG42s will also just feel like they don't have recoil, which is going to be nuts. It's going to be like playing any other assault rifle based game. Um, like I feel like STG stonks are going down the more that they buff the FG42. Right now with Germany, it it's nice to run a lot of squads that have access to STGs or MKBs or whatever it is you have access to, right? Like running your assault engineers or running multiple assault squads. With this change, they're going to be like the Americans and the Japanese, where it feels like you're better off just running rifleman squads, because even though you have less specialists, well, I guess you don't have less specialists. I think it's still like three, but even though you don't have assaulters and you only have like two or three specialists, you're getting a 9-man squad, and most of them are going to have these FG42s, and they're going to feel great. So, slight shift there from assault squads to rifleman squads. I'm curious how that's going to change at BR4. I feel like some of the shittier assault rifles should probably go down to BR4 then. Um, since they're all at BR5. And to be fair, I've been complaining about them all being BR5 since they first made the merge. I just don't think that an MKB and an STG belong in the same BR with each other. But, that's just me. I think that there are various ways they could handle it. Like, you could have your MP43s at BR4, your STGs at BR5, and then move the MKBs from being assault rifles to going into the LMG slot and putting them in BR3 since they were used in like 1942. And so it limits how many of them you can bring. I think that would be a much more interesting and eloquent solution. That and like in a video way in the past, I like statistically compared them to a bar, and I feel like they're very similar. Like they have more ammo, the bar shoots faster, the bar has less ammo, it hits harder. You get the idea. Um, I don't know. There are certain weapons that I think they need to space them out to give them more viability. The same is true for some of the drum-fed Soviet SMGs. Um, I know that there's probably like a power argument that's going to be made against this, but I'll rehash what I said in the past. Most of the BR2 SMGs I could comfortably bring into BR5, and it wouldn't fundamentally change the way that I play the game. And so the difference between the top and the bottom end of most of the SMGs just is not very significant, so I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be spaced out across the BRs so that there's more incentive to actually use them. Because when you put them all in one BR, then I think they lose value, and then there's just like one that's the clear winner that statistically is better than the others, and then there's no point to even bother with any of the others. And then it begs the question, why are they even in the game at that point? Like, it's cool to have them, but I think there needs to be an incentive to actually use them. Anyway, moving on. So they've reduced the recoil impulse of the MG34 Patronentravel by 10%. I've always been a fan of that one. It shoots a little bit slower than the MG42, but it has more ammo. This is a video I made a while back comparing the MG40 or MG34 Patronentravel to the MG42 to the MG15. I feel like it's really just personal preference, where it depends. Do you want more ammo? Do you want more fire rate? And I do think there's a point where you can have too much fire rate, but it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. Having high fire rate in close quarters is really useful, but having lower fire rate if you're fighting in the mid-range and having more ammo is more beneficial. So TLDR, it's playstyle dependent. I like the MG4 or the MG34 Patronentravel though, but I use all three of them. Although admittedly, I've been using the MG42 earlies primarily, but that's because I have the premium squad and I think they look fantastic. Moving on, they increased the recoil impulse for the belt-fed DP by 10%. They improved the accuracy of the Type 99 LMG to match the Type 97 and the Type 96. They corrected the weight of the Fedorov MG from 5.5 kilos to 9. Yeah, the barrel shroud really weighing it down, huh? They added a sprint speed penalty for the Fedorov MG. They increased the aiming speed for the Fedorov MG. Really, the Fedorov MG is just feeling bad, isn't it? You know, it used to be a Moscow weapon, and now it's, I think, BR5 like the other Fedorov. And I guess before you could make the argument like it's premium. I think it had, obviously because they're changing the stats here, it probably had performance similar to the normal Fedorov, but now it's just getting nerfed. Feels bad, bro. I'm glad I don't have it. Um, Also, I thought they were kind of ugly. Like, I would have considered getting them if they were like a BR2 weapon. Again, because they used to be a Moscow weapon. But at BR5, I have Fedorovs, and the normal Fedorov is just better. Or at least it feels like it should be better, since it doesn't have a giant barrel shroud and a bipod down to your knees. Anyway, um, improved the handling of the Irma EMP. They reduced recoil by 18%, increased recoil compensation from 60 to 70%, and they made the recoil slightly more predictable. So, Irma EMP stonks going up. Vehicles, they implemented an anti-kamikaze system where players who crash an undamaged aircraft will be prohibited from respawning in an aircraft for the next spawn. Um, I think that there are probably ways around that, but we'll see. Anyway, they added the ability to spawn with a motorized infantry squad without an APC, both when the maximum number of APCs are present and when the limit is not reached. Finally! I've been asking for this since day one of the APCs. Now you will no longer be punished for having multiple APCs on your lineup. You can park the first one, you can bring in the second one, and you can keep playing the squad because the squad composition for an APC squad is really good. But sometimes I don't want to blow up my APC to spawn the squad. I like this. This is a good change. Anyway, they removed the unnecessary second horizontal aiming drive from the pie menu when repairing the Tasse. Added a notification when the player's APC is destroyed. They added a 250 kilo bomb for the BF-109 K4. I might actually start flying the K4. I've been flying the G10 and the G14 a lot for like an air superiority role. But with a 250 kilo bomb, the K4 is actually going to be pretty nice. They added a 250 kilo bomb for the P63, also going to be kind of nice. They adjusted the crew positioning in the Flak Panzer. They increased the flight altitude of AI bombers in Pacific locations. They fixed an issue where the crew of the Achilles could fire their personal weapons inside the vehicle. This is like a constant issue with this game. This is not the first time that's been an issue. I remember back in Stalingrad, way back in the day, when you could drive a KV-1 around with a crew loaded out with PPSH-41s, and it was just like a mobile bunker because in Stalingrad, you could kill the KV-1, but it was a particularly difficult tank to kill, and it made it much harder when you couldn't walk near it to put like TNT on it, because you would get shot by the AI shooting through the walls of the tank. So I'm not surprised it was an issue with yet another tank, because this seems to come up fairly frequently. I appreciate that they fixed it again. So, they reworked collision for shells, anti-tank, and grenade launch projectiles. All I'm going to say is we'll see. Multiple times they've fixed the way grenades interact with like windows, and then you log in, you go and throw a grenade near a window and it just doesn't work. Or you try to shoot an AT launcher out a window and it blows you up. So, like I said, all I'm going to say is we'll see. Maybe things have gotten better. I doubt it. But I hope. I hope that I can actually fire a Panzerfaust out a window without it hitting the window. Or fire it past, like, a fence where it, clearly goes over the fence without it blowing up the fence. But, like I said, We'll see. I won't hold my breath. The Half-Track M3A1, they lowered the front window shield to combat position. Finally. Now your driver doesn't have to worry about getting domed. And AI commanders can now use tank squads. This is something that I always wondered about. I wondered if the AI could use tank squads, and I always assumed that they could. And maybe it's just because people do stupid shit with tanks, but apparently they couldn't. But cool, I guess. To be fair, there are a lot of battles that I get into where, and I'm curious if they'll make the AI able to use planes. I kind of hope that they do. But I feel like I've gotten into a lot of battles where either the tank slot or the plane slot just doesn't get used for most of the match. So like I can sit there and at my leisure I can be like, you know what, this life I feel like using a tank. But like it feels bad if your team has an armor slot and just doesn't use it all game. Now, I acknowledge it's going to feel even worse if there's an AI who spawns in with like some god awful tank. Like let's say you're a BR5 and they spawn in like a Panzer 4 and then it's an AI so they sit there and do brain dead AI things. Like that's going to also feel bad. But at least in the matches where no one would have spawned in vehicles, you're at least going to have a tank and it might shoot at the enemy, which is better than not having a tank that isn't shooting at the enemy. So we'll see. I feel like that's a good change that might come back to bite me in the ass. Other than that, there's a lot of UI, or not a lot, there's a few UI and graphics changes, making the game prettier. And there are locations and missions. So they're adding missions for various different locations. They're balancing capture points, all the normal stuff. Nothing too exciting. And then there's some other improvements. So added a nickname decolor or decorator for logging in for 3 years. AI soldiers will follow the player's position less chaotically. That's nice. Added the ability to resupply ammo for any team's ammo box. I'm curious what that means. Like, okay, so right now, if you've got a German gun, you can go to a German ammo box and you can refill it, regardless of whether you're playing like an American or a German. So if you're an American, you spawn in with an American gun. You can only resupply off American boxes. But if you pick up an MP40, you can only supply it off of German boxes. I'm curious if this means that I'm going to be able to take any nation's gun and go to any nation's box and refill the ammo. Which, if you can, I don't like that. I think it's a bad change. It makes sense for you to be able to get your nation's ammo from your nation's box and the other nation's ammo from the other nation's box. But I could be misreading this, and this might be the ability to like resupply the ammo box itself without having to build a new one, in which case that would be a good thing. So I don't know. But if it's just making it so that all ammo boxes are just generic ammo boxes, then I think that's fucking stupid. Anyway, they fixed audio delays with the PS4. They fixed a bug where the practice or messages from practice could appear in the next session. They fixed some memory leaks. They fixed a bug with HDR on DX11, optimization for DX12, and improved server compatibility for custom games. So I'm curious to see what gets announced for new weapons and new vehicles. I'm still not going to go and get on the test server. I don't even think it's up anymore. It's usually only up for like a day, but if it's still up, I'm not going to go and get on there. Not until they announce new weapons and new vehicles, because all of this is interesting and whatnot, but like I can see when it goes live. A lot of them are just cool changes. They don't fundamentally change the game for me, but when they come out with more vehicles, more soldiers, a new event, that's when I will care more. And that's when I'll care about actually testing it. This stuff, like, cool, but it's gonna happen. We can see it when it happens. So let me know what you think of the changes down below. I think that they're pretty cool, but I'm still waiting to see the exciting stuff for the next update. Here's to hoping that we finally get a campaign with Japan and Russia fighting. I think Japan's been fleshed out enough at this point that they could competitively fight Russia. I understand the shoulder launched AT weapons won't cut it, but they've got pretty good aircraft and they have pretty decent tanks now. Like the Ho-Ri prototype should be just fine to deal with most of the Soviet tanks. So, I don't know. We'll see. I would like to fight Russia as Japan, and I would really like to get a new environment for Russia that is just less urban. I really, really do just want to get a much more open, less urban place to fight. So get out there, kick ass, take names, and win your games.